Imagine a land full of scaly creatures blowing steam from their snouts and curly-haired horned beasts lumbering about. Sounds like something from a storybook or mythological tale. Or maybe this fabled land is a bit closer to home. Hi, my name is Stephanie Merkelbach, the librarian in residence here in the Rare Book and Special Collections Division. And today I want to talk about early descriptions of some classic North American animals, starting with the American alligator. Native to the southeastern United States, these large reptiles have occupied the North American region for at least 7 million years. But early descriptions of this familiar crocodilian emphasize some more unique characteristics. The most famous account coming from Philadelphia-born naturalist William Bartram. In the late 18th century, Bartram dedicated his time to exploring the American Southeast, particularly the tropics of Florida. It was during one such trip that he wrote the following passage. Behold him rushing forth from the flags and reeds. His enormous body swells. His plaited tail brandished high floats upon the lake. The waters like a cataract descend from his opening jaws. Clouds of smoke issue from his dilated nostrils. The earth trembles with his thunder. This otherworldly description may sound a bit outlandish, but it is one of the first printed descriptions of an American alligator, though it might sound more akin to a dragon. Bartram even depicted these famous smoky nostrils in a sketch. But we know now that these descriptions and illustrations were likely a mix of Bartram's attempt to excite readers unfamiliar with the alligator and a bit of misunderstood myth. Another more humorous and fantastical depiction of the American alligator can be seen in Davy Crockett's Almanac, published in 1837. A woman seems to be beating back the gator with a pair of tongs as she rides on its enormous form. It comes from a collection of almanacs printed in the 19th century, full of humorous images likely not rooted in any truth, but meant to entertain the public of the mythic adventures of Crockett and his family. Both images and their corresponding stories, though later debunked, are prime examples of early American interest in the wilderness and the unique fauna found across the continent. However, before Bartram's fantastical account of the American alligator, there is another animal given its own unique caricature, the American bison. Also known as the American buffalo, this bovine was first depicted in print by historian Francisco Lopez de Gamora in his book La Historia General de las Indias. This book was printed in 1554 and shows a very curly and more cow-like creature than what we know as the American bison now. And this was likely because de Gamora himself never traveled to the Americas and based many of his illustrations on descriptions given by sailors and travelers. Hence the scientifically inaccurate depiction. In fact, many of these early images and descriptions of famous animals in print from the Americas were often skewed towards the outlandish for the same reason. Many naturalists and zoologists did not get a chance to study these animals up close. Often, they were working off descriptions from travelers or anatomically inaccurate taxidermy. Such is the case with Audubon's less famous prints, the viviparous quadrupeds of North America, which featured my favorite image of a very expressive and fluffy raccoon, another icon of North American nature. But that is to say that none of these images or descriptions are the very first for any of these animals. Much of what we knew then and know now comes from the Native American tribes living on these lands for thousands of years prior to European settlement. Indigenous people had a rich cultural understanding of the many creatures found on the American continent long before the United States formed, and continued to steward flora and fauna in North America to this day. With that, I'd like to close out with a familiar and ferocious animal, the brown bear. Famously encountered multiple times by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark as they journeyed across America to the Pacific Ocean. In these descriptions of the bear, they make note of the Native Americans' name for the brown bear, the white bear. Now, that may sound contradictory and might bring to mind another large bear native to the Americas. But the white bear Lewis and Clark encountered on their journey was in fact the grizzly bear. And it might surprise some that the name grizzly comes not from the word grizzly, with an S, which means horror and fear, but instead grizzled, meaning to have streaked or graying hair. So the moniker grizzly bear comes not from their terrifying might, but is actually associated with the light coloring sometimes found at the tips of grizzly bear fur. Though I don't think that takes away any of their ferocity. Thank you for joining me to look at the unique and humorous results of our nation's early fascination with nature. Though a land of dragons and fantastic beasts it is not, go out and explore the nature our country has to offer. What you find might surprise you.